Good evening, everyone. The Crop Gamer back here again with another One Piece TCG video. This one is mildly different in terms of I'm not talking on a specific topic as a whole. We're doing basically a 2025 roundup of the entire hobby throughout the year, the good and bads of what have happened, what's released. Yeah, let's jump right into it. So we've had everything here. We'll get more in detail now. So we start January to March. It's fairly slow with how it started out. March you had OP10 release. It was an okay set. It wasn't anything meta defining. The only real things that came from it were the 3-cost Tashigi that we got from it, the really amazing green card, just protect your board. It's perfect. It was an amazing card from the set, but that doesn't make set as a whole something good. You had Yellow Kid as the leader. That was an interesting one due to just how I feel poorly written the leader was. Um, but that'd be something for another video if we wanted to get in depth with how leaders work. As well as you had some other nice additions. You had the Red Green Smoker leader for Punk Hazard, that was really cool. But as the set goes, it was okay. It's not a Marmite set, it's not a love or you hate it, it's just an okay set. After that, yeah, the Bandai Fest, where a fair few things were announced, when the next band this was going to be, future things to come, teasers for future sets. You had ST21, quite a very good structure deck, I'd say. The leader itself, super solid, kind of just a revamp from STO1 when it came out back in 2022, which is wild to think that we're now into the 4th year of this card game, which I think is absolutely wild. But yeah, the deck itself came with amazing cards. So you had the 6-cost Rush Luffy, which was absolutely incredible, and the Rush Zora as well. Absolutely just phenomenal structure. But yeah, unfortunately, there's not really much going on within January to March. It's kind of a slow year. You got the same kind of decks going on. But yeah, let's get to April. So we had the first ban list of 2025 in this one, something that was quite needed. The meta at the time was quite heavily ruled by two decks in particular. It was Blue Dolphy after the structure decks we had released for it, um, which were futures to come, but at the moment in time it was very much an integral piece. It was getting quite out of hand because before everything was going on, it wasn't fun. Blue Dolphy just absolutely rampant as anything, because you didn't even have the structure decks at that point. You just had Jinbei, leader effect on the second turn with 3 Don, Jinbei until Inevitable Evil or something else, and it was just you fill your board out immediately within 2 turns, and it just wasn't fun. Along with Black Yellow Luffy, that deck was miserable to play against as well, because there was not really much skill required behind it, just when you take your life and when you don't. But even then, that's just how most decks work. So this ban list, you had obviously Jinbei, absolutely. I mean, there were definitely other cards you could have ripped from it, but with the Jinbei hit, it makes sense. And then you had Raigo, or Kingdom Come, was very strong for 2 decks in particular, and technically a third one, but mainly Enel and BY Luffy, because Enel loves sitting around 1 to 2 life cards, and Vegapunk to a degree got hit quite heavily with that, because that deck never really had any pure removal in its own right. Then you had Ice Age, completely stupidly broken card. Just pay 1 Don, give something -5. In the format you were at then, before Emu, Ice Age was such a pivotal card for any black deck because it's like they have a massive body on board. For 8 Don, you could play a Jack, then Ice Age an 8-cost, Jack, remove it. It was just insane because you can keep doing that consistently every turn, especially with the Blackbeard structure deck that was to come. You could in effect on its KO grab the Ice Age back and keep going from there. Then obviously 8-cost Moria was an absolutely fundamentally broken card. It was way too generic for its own good. So you had decks like Lucci as well at the time. That was chronically too strong. BY Luffy, so many decks. If you could play Moria, you would, because it's just such a good card. But it was just broken before release, and how it managed to make it through surprises me to no end, because I can understand the intention was just for Black Moria and Perona, but this, just how generic it was was so rampant in the format, it just wasn't fun to play against. Then you had the announcement of block rotation and an eternal format. So block rotation being on the pips on the card, so you can see on the Moria there in the little screen, there is a 2. That means it's block 2. But with a lot of cards for block 1, it's OP1 to OP4, up to, I believe, ST08, if I'm not wrong, ST6, ST08. Everything marks with a 1, apart from the select cards that they chose, as well as mangas. We'll get into that in a moment. We're going to get rotated out as of April this year. So this is a perfect one as an example. So 1-cost Nami. Their announcement was that if it had a manga, as a variant for it, it would stay eternal. And purely, I think, because of just a money-making scheme, but also it's just such a strong card as a searcher goes. Searchers are always really good, but Nami is a particular one because she's had over about 20 printings now. One of them being the manga from the first PRB set, so she's now an eternal card. And unless they ever ban her, which they won't, she'll stick around forever. Another card which I think people were a bit confused by due to its printings was the Rush Luffy from STR1. Now, this one didn't have a manga itself, but it had an Oda signed variant of it, which in effect was on a rarity level of a manga rare. That's where people were a bit confused by because, got a rarity, a printing of that rarity. You'd be surprised that it's being rotated out. However, you have had new cards, which I wouldn't say power creep it, but do somewhat similar things. You've got the new 2-cost Sanji from ST21, as I mentioned earlier, which can give something unblockable, as well as a couple other cards that do the same thing, as well as ones that just have inherent rush. After that, the tins. The first wave of the tins. They were pretty cool. Having like little penny tins like that, it kind of reminds me of Pokemon, where they have a lot of their tins. But yeah, it was a nice little addition to have in the set. You just get some nice custom Don, a couple of packs. Not too bad. I think they're about £10 to £13 priced. It's not awful. You get a nice little storage tin, but no one really uses them for that. But yeah, that sums up April fairly well. It was a very good ban list, one that was very well needed for the decks that were currently running rampant at the time. I have no real faults with it. When we get to May and June, so start of May, EBO2. Very good set, very problem with it was very short printed to a degree. A lot of shops couldn't get it due to either their distributors or just there not being enough allocation. But it was a very good set. The green purple Luffy that came in it was a very strong leader at the time. The problem with it was that a lot of the prices for the cards were stupid money. So Sanji puddings, many of you may remember, they were about £12 within the UK minimum. Trying to get a place out of that was just miserable. A lot of these super rares stayed quite high, at least £5 and above for the entire time. But now some of them, like the Law and the Sengoku, normally about £1 or £2. The Enel's gone up again, along with the Vegapunk blocker due to new support, and Enel being just one of those decks that keeps sticking around and doesn't go away. But as the set goes, very good set. After that, head to June, we got the SD23 to 28. These were all very understandable decks, but one thing we were surprised by is that from this, back in December, we just had OP9 release. So 4 of the leaders here being Shanks, Black Purple Luffy, Blackbeard, and Buggy. Getting structures immediately was quite shocking. However, with some of them, especially Buggy in particular, I find it was somewhat necessary because Buggy had one essential card, which was the 7-cost Shoe Buggy, that was very important for the deck, and there was no real way of getting it apart from in pre-releases. Other than that, it was interesting. The Yamato and Bonnie support was really nice, especially the Yamato definitely needed it. But they were a lot of fun. They were really useful to have. I think I would have rather seen some other decks instead of some of the ones here. Like Shanks didn't really need one. But other than that, it was just. I mean, if people want me to, I'm more than happy to make a video on what I'd like to see for like future structure decks as well. Like I've done with my OP15 predictions video. I'm more than happy to go through something like that as well. After that, we had OP11. Very good set. This is the start of somewhat of a problem. Was the OP11 was the Snake Man leader for Luffy. It was stupidly broken. The leader effect itself is very strong. That's not what it makes itself inherently broken. Very strong leader. It's a 3 life 6k. It's what you could do with it. So you then had what was happening was just 9-cost Sanji into 9-cost Big Mom, on play Dom -1, pitch a card from hand, heal a card from top of your life, and then you can put one of your, or heal a card from top of your deck to your life, then put one of your opponent's characters that cost 6 or less from their board to the top or bottom of their life. It was very efficient board removal piece and kept healing your leader back up, and then you sit 6k for most of the time, along with the Katakuri blocker as well, just restanding your Big Mom Pirates, as well as being a blocker itself, ramping a Don at the end of the turn. It was just, for the deck itself, it was way too strong, and it was just doing too much, and you can't really play around it. But then that kind of sums up June. We'll go to July and August. So July, it wasn't much going on in July. You had some spoilers for OP12, which was a set we were all very hyped for. For myself personally, I was very hyped for Kuzan. Just the deck itself was really cool, just being able to mill cards from your hands and then just draw them back out. Very interesting deck. Other than that, not much going on in July. August is where it kind of picks up a bit. So August, we then get to OP12 releasing. we didn't realize one of the problems, and it's on the pack art, which is Zorro. So Green Zorro is by far one of the most degenerate, and I mean this in the meanest way possible, very monkey in the terms of you can actively turn your brain off and just play this deck. There is no thought behind it. It is turn one, either on 1 Don or 2 Don, play Perona or Hiyori Searcher, grab out 5 Costa Shigi, and then from there on, you just keep playing that. And there's not really much your opponent can do because you get guaranteed 2 swings a turn on a board piece and then a leader. It's not fun. It is miserable. And then having a restand event as well, which you've only ever seen with really Uta. And even then, that deck wasn't apparently strong. This is just the deck was miserable to play against and still is. But yeah, other than that, you then had the second ban list of 2025, which was definitely, I'd say, a controversial one, to say the least, because I think a lot of people were kind of confused with some of the things they did, mainly being the first one of banning Blue Nami. Now, I think if you ask most people if they had a choice between banning Blue Nami and another leader, they wouldn't really choose Blue Nami. Yes, the deck is irritating. I've played it multiple times, or played against it multiple times. It is frustrating, but there are ways of getting around it, of knowing how to swing and what to do and what not to do. Those who complain about Blue Nami are either probably fairly new to the game or just don't know what they're doing when playing around it. So I think in that term, and then with the new errated leader being you can only use East Blue cards in the deck is now, when rotation hits, going to be unplayable because a lot of the East Blue cards that came out in OPO3 with the deck are getting rotated out, and the deck will physically be unplayable because there's not enough cards that you can put in that deck for it to be legal. But other than that, it was a shocking one that kind of confused us a bit. But then a couple other things kind of baffled us as well. Not with the UP Luffy effect, but something very interesting. It's the first time we ever saw a pair ban. So Bandai put out a statement in the ban list that they're not banning UP Luffy or the 9-cost Linlin or 8-cost Cat. They're pair banning it from the deck, so you legally can no longer run either of those two cards together or either or in that deck, which I think is completely valid. In reality, one of the main problems was the 9-cost Sanji getting 2 bodies on board, but they wanted to kind of keep 9-cost Sanji around because he now has a manga as well, but keep the deck playable, although it always has been playable. The leader effect is itself just insane. The next couple of things happened on the ban list were very interesting. Next one being the unbanning of Sakazuki. Now, this threw a lot of people off because if you know anybody who played in the Sakazuki meta, it was miserable. I believe at a couple of events, top 16 was just purely Sakazuki. So it shocked a lot of people, even with Ice Age being gone. Sakazuki had a lot of, especially Black Navy utility to help with the Blue Navy stuff like the Muracano, which is just basically a very small pseudo Gravity Blade Raging Tiger. It threw a lot of people through hurdles because it made no sense, because certain decks like Rayleigh, Sanji to a degree struggles with it, but a lot of decks for the most part struggle with blue black as a whole, and Sakazuki was one of those decks that just we never thought it would come back, and Bandai saying it was going to be healthy, it was a healthy period for it to come back was very shocking. It's only up until when OP13 released with Emu, Sakazuki completely fell off, because Emu being Emu, you cannot remove their board in any way, shape, or form, and it's very difficult to do so. But other than that, it's kind of it's funny enough. Its matchup into Red Blue Ace is insanely good, which I felt was unintentional but hilariously canonically accurate. But that kind of sums August up fairly well as well. It was definitely a confusing ban list, but one that definitely needed to happen, as well as we do have the coming ban list in April, which I will make a video on later down the line. Then we also had the unbanning of Carbagy. Carbagy was one of those things that got banned. I believe it was one of the only cards we had banned before Nami released itself because of how stupidly strong it was, in the sense of it stacks in effect of. I won't say it stacks, but it's very much you have emoji out, or then you play Carbagy, draw 2, trash 1. Opponent swings the next turn, you then bounce Carbagy back, play it again next turn, and then if you have like 2 in hand, you just play 2 Carbagy, have like 2 or 3 Dons standing, draw 4, bin 2 off. It was way too efficient with going through your deck that quickly, along with like Sanji's Pilaf, Kaya. It was way too strong. But the banning of Nami, of that leader, and then the introduction of the new promo one, I can see the reasoning from banning, because there's no point having it banned anymore. However, it gets rotated along with the Nami leader. It would get rotated this coming April, so it really made no difference on why, apart from just having her consistent in the meta again. But then at that point, again, in my personal opinion, I think this is one of the only decks with the new Nami that needs a structure deck, because it would be one of the most beneficial things for it. Just give it good balance support, doesn't make it stupidly broken, but it makes it consistently good. And having an alt-win condition like that in the game is always really nice to see. Then we get to September and October. So September, you had ST22 release. The deck itself was quite good, topped a couple of events, had one of the main cards in there, which is I Am Whitebeard, the 8 cost, where if you lead a Whitebeard type pirates, you can then play an Edward Newgate from your hand, and then you can then rip the top of your life. If you do, your leader gets plus 2k till the end of your next turn, or to the end of your opponent's next turn. And that was inherently good very much for this deck as well. You had the 9 cost Newgate, which has double attack, quite good. It's just what it'd be used for later down the line, which is quite terrifying. But for the structure deck itself, very good structure. Been waiting for it for a while, and it was quite well received. Then you had the serialized Zorro announcement. Now, like me and a couple of my friends, we did want to do a leader collection. I have a fair few leaders, and my mate, he has pretty much all the OPL 1 leaders, not pre-errata, but it's collecting every single leader. So we already had the serialized Luffy we'd have to get. This announcement of a serialized Zoro being one of 600 as well was definitely, it felt like a kick to the groin to a degree. It's really nice to have pricing like that, but then trying to do leader collections as well, it definitely clashed with a bit. Hence why with my leader collection, I probably wouldn't go for the serialized cards just because of how difficult they are to get, and I'm already having to try and get one serialized for my Shanks collection. But that's a different story in its own right. But Serialized Zoro, it was very cool to see. It is a lovely artwork. I cannot fault it for that. It's definitely something that shocked us, but in a good way. It's just a bit of a ball witherer with it being for a leader collection. But if you manage to get it, or manage to even pack it at least in an event, props to you. Well done for managing to get it. But yeah, that's kind of it for September. Not really much going on. We hit October. PRB2 released. Now, this was probably by far one of my favourites, if not my favourite set that they've ever printed, particularly down to one reason of in EBO2, which we've recently spoken on, they released Secret Rare Luffy, which was a 6 cost, 7k, the Russia that's if your leader's if your leader's multicolored and your opponent has 5 or more Don on board, that it gains rush. Very good effect, and then when attacking, you can return 2 active Don to your extra deck, and you can restand it and it can swing again. Very, very strong card. The problem was it was very impossible. I say very impossible. It was very difficult to try and pull it, and even if you did, the card itself was about 50 quid. That's what one of the problems I had with the UP Luffy deck was because you had to have mandatory 4 of those. 4 Bon Clay, and Bon Clay at the time was going for about 35 quid. The UP Luffy's for about 50. The deck was stupidly expensive for no reason. Secret Sanji's hadn't had their reprint yet, so they were about 25 to 30 quid as well. You had Giant, well, Giant wasn't expensive until PRB2, but it's very much, there's a lot going into the deck that was very expensive just to play the deck baseline, and it made it quite a miserable meta. However, I will stand by it to this day. My Green Odin deck clarted many UP Luffy decks, and it was very funny to watch them mauled over it. But with PRB2, I'm very happy Bandai took initiative with that 6 cost Luffy. They had already announced what was going to be printed in that set, but I think due to the issues with EBO2 and the prices of the Luffy, they did an emergency printing and they put the EBO2 Luffy in here as well, regardless of the sets that released in between. Now, with the set itself, it had many good reprints and many lovely art pieces they made. The SPs in there were very nice. So you had like Carrot, Pudding, Law, Shanks, which again I need. All the Don in there that they printed was very nice. The reprints were crucial because by this point, EBO1 had released and it was out for a while. Brooks, Cavendish's, the Chopper Blocker, they were all at least £15 to £25, and the alt arts were even worse in pricing. They were about £35 to £50, depending on which one it was. And reprints like that, especially for this and PRB1, were integral. Because I know the Chopper got reprinted in PRB1, but even then, I believe it was still quite expensive. I may be wrong. I think it was only just the manga that got reprinted. I'm not fully sure of PRB1. Kind of forgotten to a degree. But PRB2, the Cavendish's, the Brooks, Tashigi's as well were getting a bit expensive. There was just so many good reprints, and Bon Clay as well was reprinted in this. It was just such an impeccable reprint set. It's by far one of the best sets they've printed, and the fact that they emergency reprinted the Luffy as well was incredible. Because at the time as well when OP12 released, you then had the, if I can remember it, Kuma. and Kuma was a very good secret rare. Just on play, bin a card from hand, heal a card from top of your life, from top of your deck to your life, and then on KO, same thing as the on play, just minus the pitching a card from hand. It's an insanely good card, and it kind of dropped to around about 20 quid. Then, due to just the fact that so many yellow decks will need that card, it's gone back up again to about £40 per copy now, which I believe I spoke about in the my issues on the scalpers video. But yeah, it's just as a whole, incredible set, incredible set. Then after that, we had the Learn to Play deck, which I think was by far one of the better things that they've made. It's very nice because originally you had the structure decks, and it's a bit awkward trying to pick up with the structure decks. With the Learn to Play deck, it was very perfect in how it was made. The decks themselves are all really strong. UI Nami, SD21 Luffy, and then Green Zoro. All really good decks. Cannot fault them for the reprints in there, as because you had like Dragon. People were expecting a Kuma reprint for the Nami, but that definitely didn't happen because it was way too fresh at the time, and it wouldn't make much sense just to give a secret rare to the UI Nami deck. But it was a very good item for new players if they want to learn. Pricing for it's fair enough, 40 quid for it, 3 decks that are ready to play. They're not going to talk about locals, but they'll at least teach you the basics of the deck, and if you do want to continue with it, which I think was perfect. We then move on to November and December. Start November, OP13 released. I say with a joy because it has been miserable since that set released. We all saw the leaders, we saw Emu, we saw Roger, we saw Ace. Everyone was really hyped for it. It's like good new set. Everyone's really hyped. This is gonna be insane. It then released, and then you've been in a Dorito meta of what's pretty much been Emu, Ace, and Zoro. Nothing else, and then straggling behind on fourth, it is the Roger deck. Then after that, it's kind of whatever can get through. You have some better decks like Koala and Sabo from this set as well. Have been doing quite well recently to combat like with Emu. Koala's very good in the counter matchup for it because you have the 10 cost 10 cost elders playing it and then cheating out characters. Koala effect won't trigger twice, but it'll still trigger nonetheless, and it's still very good in that sense. But the mid has been miserable. I think with Ace, we've been discussing is kind of either banning the 8 cost Iron Whitebeard event because for that deck it's just stupidly strong. Because in PRB2 as well, you had the release of the Marco blocker, which is the on KO, draw 2, and then leader effect for Ace. You then draw another card. So you're drawing 3 cards of one character dying in effect. Really fucking strong. But it's mainly been that Iron Whitebeard event. Just by the sheer fact you can then rip your life on tempo, get to 10 on. Say you rip your last life, you're at an 8k leader, you've played a 10 cost Newgate blocker. If your opponent physically cannot get through to you, they're going to lose next turn if you have the Roger in hand, and they're at 3 or so life, because at that point you will just mow them through. If not, you can always just kind of sit, wall up a bit more till you can play that Roger. As well as the leader effect, just having a guaranteed 2k in hand, as well as the deck just being built on 2ks. You normally run like 12 to 16 or something, and then from how I've seen it and how it feels like playing against it, only time I was managed to do well against it, I have a rough 50-50 record on winning and losing to it. The Treasure Cup we had at my locals, which happened in November, was our first one we could have done, was officiated, which was amazing. I went X2, so I won 2, lost 2. Only matches I lost were an Ace matchup and the Zoro matchup. I was on Green Odin. Absolutely incredible time. But it was with the Ace, it was a off-meta version of it as more of an aggro based, but the Ace I did win against, it's a bit peak from my opponent. They didn't see the cards I needed to. However, it was just Green Odin getting through in the end, which was absolutely incredible. But it's very much the sense of if they see that 10 cost event or the 8 cost event cheating out the 10 costs constantly, it is miserable. Emu itself was miserable as well. It's just like you can be on 1 life, then you get that 10 cost elders for the draw, and then you have a full board again. You've removed some of your opponent's cards, and then you're back in the game. And it's like, what do you do in that sense? Unless you have Dead Man's Game and a Hody Jones to kind of get you through it, it's very much you're up the wazoo, and there's not much you can do. Zoro, it's very much it's this 5 cost of Shigi because it's a base cost as well with the resting, then the attaching of Don. So the base cost is absolutely just eye-wateringly annoying because then you think, oh, okay, well, I'm safe. My 4 cost is now an 8 cost. It's a blocker. Cool, like the hack. But no, the Tashiki just rests the hack, and it's like, well, you're up shit creek now. There's nothing you can do. Then after that, we had the OPOP enemy, which was always like Devil Fruit collections. This one was quite different in the sense of how they like molded it. So at the bottom, you've now got a stand. In effect, so there's a flat part that the fruit itself can stand up on, so you can display it a bit better. Me personally, I like keeping them in the box. They look a lot cooler that way. But it was still just quite a nice release. The Don, the sleeves. The packaging again there is quite nice as well. That one's also a deck box instead of just being on for show. Other than that, we then moved to December. End of the year, it was as a roundup, it was a good and a bad year. You had the OP13 meta that's still currently going on, which is very miserable for most. Um, but other than that, it's a good year. The ban list was solid. The announcements were solid. The announcement of Eternal format, which looks very interesting. Hopefully, they do more support for that. Um, all the decks we got throughout the year, just what's released, what's been announced, very solid. Very excited for what's to come. Other than that, this is also a fun one. Zoro came top 8 before GTA 6 released. What I mean by that is Makenyu, who plays the live action Zoro in the Netflix and TV series, went to an event in Japan. Came, I believe it was 8th, with Emu, with his very cheeky Oda sign Matt. Completely disguised, face mask, hat, didn't announce it to anyone, and came top 8, which was absolutely incredible. How he made his way there, don't know. But I think that's absolutely incredible that one of the cast members does play the card game. But yeah, I think other than that, that's pretty much the year for a wrap. I should say thank you for the very much the big interaction with my first video coming back to this. Nearly getting to 1,000 views felt incredible. Just want to thank you all so much. And I think to top it off, yeah, like, subscribe, comment if you feel like there's anything I could add to this, or it could be coming from the new year as we're in it now. I hope you all had a wonderful Christmas and New Year's. But other than that, yeah, take it easy. I wish you all a very prosperous 2026. Take care, everyone.